The ship screamed through Haven's atmosphere like a dying bird, leaving black smoke trails across the purple sky. David gripped the controls with white knuckles, knowing this landing would hurt. Metal groaned and shrieked as the vessel plowed through alien trees, finally slamming into a hillside with enough force to crack 3 ribs and knock him unconscious. When he woke, rain pattered against the broken canopy above his head. His chest burned with each breath. The emergency systems blinked their last warnings before dying completely. David dragged himself from the wreckage, surveying the damage with a sinking heart. The colony ship that carried 200 sleeping families was gone, torn apart by a solar flare 3 systems back. His escape pod was now a twisted pile of metal and shattered dreams. Haven lived up to its name, at least. Massive trees with silver bark reached toward twin moons. Bioluminescent flowers carpeted the forest floor, glowing soft blue in the gathering darkness. The air tasted sweet and clean, breathable without filters. David limped toward a cluster of ruins visible through the trees, ancient structures covered in vines and thyme. The ruins belonged to someone long gone. Smooth walls bore symbols that hurt to look at too long. Mathematical poetry in a dead language. David found a chamber with a working door and collapsed inside, too exhausted to explore further. His medical kit contained enough supplies to wrap his ribs and dull the pain. As darkness fell completely, the flowers outside grew brighter, turning the forest into a sea of gentle light. Something small watched him from the doorway. David froze, hand moving slowly toward his survival knife. The creature stood no taller than a house cat, with scales that caught the flower light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. Small wings, crystalline and delicate, folded against its back. Its eyes were too intelligent, too aware. It chirped softly, a sound like wind chimes. "Hey there," David whispered, not moving. "You live here?" The creature tilted its head, processing his words. It took one cautious step inside, then another. David pulled a ration bar from his pack and broke off a piece, extending it slowly. The creature sniffed, then snatched the food with surprising speed, retreating to a safe distance to examine its prize. Over the following days, David established a routine. His ship was beyond repair without parts he didn't have. The ruins contained technology still humming with power after who knew how many centuries. He salvaged what he could, learning through trial and error. The small creature visited every evening, accepting food and gradually moving closer. David started talking to it. Talking to anyone, even a small alien, helped push back the crushing loneliness. He told stories about Earth, about the colony mission, about the families now drifting frozen in space fragments. The creature listened with those intelligent eyes, sometimes making soft sounds in response. 3 weeks in, David discovered a translation device in a deeper chamber. The technology interfaced directly with his neural implant, designed for species without verbal language. When the creature visited that evening, David activated it. "Can you understand me?" he asked. The device hummed, then projected symbols and concepts into his mind. Affirmative, confusion, question. "My name is David. What's yours?" The concept that came back was complex, something about embers and light and memory. David settled on Ember. Through broken translations and patient communication, David learned Ember's story. His people maintained Haven as a garden world, tending its ecosystems for purposes now forgotten. They went to the stars seeking answers about a growing silence in the galaxy. They promised to return. Ember waited. Years became decades, became longer. The automated systems maintained Haven. Ember remained, the last caretaker of an empty paradise. "I'm the last of my group too," David admitted, sitting beside Ember as artificial stars twinkled on the chamber ceiling. "Everyone I knew is gone. We're quite a pair." Ember pressed against his side, warm despite his crystalline appearance. David felt tears on his face for the first time since the disaster. In this empty galaxy, on this forgotten world, 2 lonely souls had found each other. Months passed. David mapped the ruins, finding incredible technology he barely understood. Ember showed him secret places, chambers that responded to his species' unique bioelectric signatures. Together they explored Haven's wonders, 2 survivors making meaning from remnants. David's breakthrough came in the 5th month. A communication array, ancient but functional, picked up a faint signal from deep space. Human transmission protocols. Someone else survived. "I have to go," David told Ember, his heart breaking. "There might be others out there. Other humans. I have to look." Ember understood language now, but comprehension and acceptance were different things. He watched David prepare the small shuttle he'd painstakingly restored from spare parts. The vessel could support one human in stasis for limited jumps. No room for passengers. Life support couldn't handle different biochemistries. The night before departure, David recorded holographic messages. "I'll come back if I can, little friend. You made this bearable. You made me remember what companionship feels like. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything." Launch day arrived too quickly. Ember sat on their favorite hillside, scales dim with something David had learned to recognize as sadness. The shuttle's engines whined to life, anti-gravity systems pushing against Haven's embrace. "Be well, Ember," David whispered, though the creature couldn't hear him anymore. The shuttle rose, becoming a bright point against the purple sky. Then a star, then nothing. Ember sat alone on the hillside, watching the empty sky long after David disappeared. The flowers glowed their patient blue light. The automated systems hummed their ancient songs. Haven remained paradise, but paradise meant nothing without someone to share it with. Ember looked up at the stars, at the vast empty dark where his only friend had gone. Something crystallized in his small chest, a decision that would carry him across 120 worlds and redefine what loyalty meant. He would not wait this time. He would not be left behind again. The last little dragon stood and walked toward the orbital platforms his people had abandoned so long ago. 3 days after David left, Ember made his decision final by climbing into the ancient elevator that connected Haven's surface to orbit. His people designed these systems for creatures like him, with controls that responded to bioelectric touch and intention, rather than clumsy buttons. The elevator hummed to life after centuries of silence, recognizing DNA patterns in its memory banks. The ride took hours. Ember watched his world shrink below, the purple forests and silver rivers becoming abstract patterns, then curves, then a sphere hanging in black space. He had never left Haven's surface before. His people's genetic memories carried images of space travel, but experiencing it directly made his scales ripple with colors that expressed wonder and terror in equal measure. The orbital platform stretched across the darkness like a sleeping giant. Docking ports gaped empty, waiting for ships that would never return. Ember floated through corridors in zero gravity, his small wings useless here, but his species' natural ability to survive vacuum keeping him alive. He could last 6 hours in raw space before his hibernation instincts would trigger, a survival trait from evolutionary pressures David would never fully understand. He found the hangar in the station's western spoke. Dozens of ships rested in cradles, maintained by tireless machines that didn't know their makers were gone. These vessels were smaller than the colony ships that David's people built, but they were designed for what Ember's species called pathfinding, long-range exploration and survival in hostile space. Ember approached the nearest ship, placing his foreclaw on the access panel. Systems woke instantly, recognizing him as authorized crew. The ship's name translated roughly to distant hope in human terms. It had waited 3,000 years for someone to claim it. The neural interface seat molded itself to Ember's small form. Information flooded his consciousness, overwhelming at first, then organizing itself according to instincts bred into his species over millions of years. Navigation protocols, life support management, engine harmonics. His people were born knowing how to travel between stars the way human children knew how to breathe. But knowing and doing were different things. Ember spent 2 days learning the ship's specific quirks, testing systems, gathering supplies from the station's still-functioning automated factories. He couldn't read all the technical data, but he didn't need to. The ship spoke to him in ways beyond language. Finding David's trail proved easier than expected. Human ships left distinctive ion signatures, and David's cobbled-together shuttle leaked radiation like a trail of breadcrumbs. Ember plotted the first jump, targeting a navigation beacon 15 light-years away, the closest structure along David's projected path. The jump drive engaged with a sensation like being turned inside out. Space folded. Reality hiccuped. Ember found himself staring at a different star, a red dwarf system with 3 dead planets and a slowly rotating listening post. David had been here. The post log showed a human access attempt 8 days prior. He'd downloaded star charts and left a notation in the station's ancient database. A simple message in human English that Ember's translator could parse. No one home. Moving to next coordinate. If anyone finds this, I'm looking for the colony fleet. Following their last known trajectory, Ember updated his own navigation, calculating David's next probable stop. He jumped again, reality folding around his small ship like origami made from the fabric of space itself. The second location was a frozen research station orbiting a gas giant. Ice covered the exterior, but internal systems still functioned in low-power mode. David's presence was obvious here, too. He'd used the station's fabricators to repair some component, leaving molecular signatures in the recycling system. Another note in the logs, still alone, found coordinates suggesting colony fleet passed through 17 years ago. They were heading deeper into the galactic core. We'll follow. 17 years. David was chasing ghosts across time and space. Ember wondered if his friend understood how cold this trail had become. But humans were stubborn. David had told him stories about human persistence, about explorers who traveled years to see new places, about people who searched lifetimes for answers. It was a quality Ember's people shared, this refusal to accept isolation. Jump 3 brought him to an automated mining operation stripping an asteroid field for resources no one would ever collect. David's trail was 10 days old here. Ember watched the mining drones work with mechanical precision, harvesting metals and processing them according to programming created by beings dust for millennia. The galaxy was full of ghosts, systems running on autopilot long after purpose faded. Each jump carried Ember further from Haven, deeper into the empty spiral arm where his people once thrived. He passed worlds his species had named, garden planets and research outposts all abandoned during the Great Exodus. Sometimes he found evidence of his own kind, remains in stasis pods that failed over centuries, or ships that never completed their final journeys. On the 7th world, a planet called Refuge by the old charts, Ember discovered something new. One of his people's automated gardens still functioned perfectly, tended by machines that didn't understand extinction. Trees with blue leaves grew in precise geometric patterns. Water features played symphonies through carefully designed acoustics. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, a paradise with no one to appreciate it. David had stopped here for 3 days according to atmospheric entry logs. Ember walked through the garden, following paths his friend's boots had pressed into soft ground. He found David's campsite by an artificial stream, the ashes of a fire, food wrappers from human rations, evidence of someone sitting and thinking and resting before continuing their lonely search. Ember's translator had grown more sophisticated through exposure to David's logs. He found a recording device David left behind, probably by accident. The human's voice played through the device, tired and worn. This place reminds me of Haven. Reminds me of Ember. I wonder if he's okay. I wonder if leaving him was the right choice. But what else could I do? That ship could barely support me. And if there are other humans out there, other survivors, I have to try. I have to. The recording continued with technical notes about the ship repairs David performed using the garden's maintenance fabricators. But Ember rewound it, listening again to the parts where David said his name. His friend missed him too. That knowledge made the vast dark space between them feel slightly less empty. Ember left the garden after gathering fresh supplies from the automated systems. His ship jumped again, following the ion trail like a bloodhound following a scent. World 8, World 9, World 10. David stayed ahead, always moving, always searching. Ember followed, patient and determined, closing the distance by small increments. On World 15, Ember's navigation system revealed something that made his scales flash with alarm colors. David's trail led toward a region of space marked with warnings in dozens of dead languages. The notations were ancient, but the message was clear. Dangerous space ahead, reality unstable, avoid. David was flying into trouble, and he was doing it alone. World 23 was a city that forgot how to die. Towers of unknown material reached into an orange sky, their surfaces reflecting light that bent at impossible angles. Transit systems moved empty trains through perfect loops. Factories produced goods no one would buy, stacking them in warehouses already overflowing. The city's machine intelligence had outlived its creators by so long that it no longer remembered what it was maintaining, only that maintenance was its purpose. David's trail led straight through the city center. Ember landed his ship in a plaza where fountains still danced with water that flowed in spirals defying gravity. He walked the same streets his friend had walked, seeing what David had seen. Buildings designed for beings 3 times human height. art installations that played with dimensions in ways that hurt to perceive. A civilization's entire aesthetic frozen in time. In a structure that might have been a library, Ember found more than David's boot prints. Someone had accessed the building's central database, leaving queries in human language poorly translated by ancient systems. David had been searching for information about the Exodus, about why every species in this galaxy fled or died out millions of years ago. The library's response appeared on a still-functioning display. Records indicate coordinated evacuation began 2.3 million years prior. Cause expansion of quantum destabilization effect originating from galactic core. The effect creates zones where physical laws become unreliable. Survival rate within effect 0. Evacuation completion rate 47%. Remaining populations presumed extinct. Ember's translator struggled with some concepts, but the meaning was clear enough. Something at the galaxy's heart made reality itself sick. The smart ones ran. The slow ones died. Haven existed far enough out on the spiral arm to avoid the worst effects, protected by distance and luck. But David was heading toward the core, following human signals that led deeper into danger. Did he know? The library database would have told him. Yet his trail continued inward, unwavering. Ember left the city as its systems began their nightly cycle, lights activating in windows of empty apartments, entertainment systems playing shows for ghosts. The machine intelligence bid him farewell in a language dead before humans discovered fire. The next dozen worlds painted a consistent picture. David stopped at each one, searching databases, analyzing records, piecing together what happened to this galaxy, and at each stop he left messages in the log systems, notes addressed to no one and everyone. Finding more evidence of the evacuation. The human fleet knew about the instability. They were running from it too. Coordinates suggest they headed for the nearest satellite galaxy, but that's 100,000 light-years away. Could they make it? On World 28, Ember's journey changed completely. He arrived at a planet called New Spring by its automated beacon, a world covered in vast oceans and scattered islands. The atmosphere was breathable for humans. The climate gentle, the resources abundant. David's ion trail led to the largest island where something impossible waited. People. Living humans. Not frozen in stasis or long dead, but alive and walking and building homes from local materials. Ember approached cautiously, unsure how they would react to a small alien appearing from the sky. His ship landed on a beach where waves crashed against black sand. A group of humans noticed immediately, grabbing tools that could serve as weapons, forming a protective formation around their younger members. "Wait," one shouted, a woman with gray hair and a voice that carried authority. "That's not a hostile vessel. Those are old Pathfinder designs, scientific ships." Ember emerged slowly, scales shifting to colors his species used for peaceful intentions, soft blues and greens, non-threatening patterns. The humans stared, some backing away, others leaning forward with curiosity. "It's small," a younger man observed. "Look, it's trying to communicate." The translator device Ember wore activated, projecting his intentions as simplified concepts. Searching. Friend. Human named David. Questions. "David?" The gray-haired woman's eyes widened. Tall man, dark hair, eyes that looked tired, spoke with an accent from old Earth's eastern regions. "Affirmative. Affirmative." Excitement colors rippled across Ember's scales. The woman smiled, sad and knowing. "He was here 3 weeks ago. Stayed for 5 days. We begged him to remain with us, but he said he needed to keep searching. Said there was a main fleet he needed to find. That he couldn't rest until he knew what happened to them." The humans welcomed Ember into their settlement. A community of 200 souls descended from a colony ship that crashed on New Spring 60 years prior. They had adapted, built a life, accepted their isolation. Their elders remembered Earth only through stories. Their children knew only this island, this ocean, this sky. "We thought we were alone," the woman explained. Her name was Ruth. "David was the first outsider we'd seen. And now you. The galaxy feels less empty suddenly." Ember stayed 2 days learning what he could about David's visit. The humans showed him their settlement, their farms and workshops, their school where children learned to read from books transcribed by hand. They showed him the memorial garden where they remembered the 70 colonists who died in the crash, including Ruth's parents. "David gave us something precious," Ruth said, standing in the garden as twin moons rose. He gave us coordinates to other habitable worlds, systems where our descendants might expand someday. He gave us hope that we're not the last humans anywhere. Even if we never see others again, knowing they exist matters. When Ember prepared to leave, the entire settlement came to see him off. Children gave him drawings they'd made, depicting a small dragon and a tall human as friends. Adults packed supplies, foods that would keep, and items they thought might help in his search. "Bring him back this way if you can," Ruth said. "Tell David he has a home here if he wants it. Tell him being alone is a choice and he doesn't have to make that choice." Ember launched with their words echoing in his mind. The colony grew small below, a spark of life on a big empty world. He plotted the next jump, following David's trail toward the unstable core regions. The worlds that followed grew stranger. Reality bent in subtle ways, making navigation difficult. On World 37, water flowed upward. On World 42, time passed differently in different locations, creating zones where cause and effect swapped places. On World 48, Ember watched a sun rise 3 times in one day, each sunrise occurring simultaneously from his perspective. David's trail persisted through all of it, his shuttle somehow navigating the quantum instabilities. Human stubbornness, Ember thought with something like pride. His friend was either brilliant or lucky, and probably both. On World 55, Ember found something that made his crystalline heart sink. David's trail split into multiple possible paths, the ion signature scattering across different quantum states. The instability was affecting probability itself. David could be on any of 6 different trajectories now, each equally real until observed. Ember made a choice, picking the path that led most directly toward the core. If David wanted to find answers, he would go to the source. That's what explorers did, what pathfinders did. They followed mysteries to their conclusions. Even when wisdom suggested turning back, the little dragon jumped into uncertain space, chasing his friend through a galaxy that couldn't decide what was real anymore. The ring hung in space like a promise made by gods and forgotten by time. Ember's ship emerged from its jump to find the structure dominating the viewport, a massive circle of unknown metal that could swallow 100 suns. Lights flickered across its surface in patterns that suggested active systems, technology that refused to surrender to entropy, despite millions of years alone. David's ion trail led directly to the ring's largest docking port. Ember followed it down, his ship dwarfed by the structure's scale. The dock could accommodate vessels the size of moons. David's small shuttle sat in one corner like a toy forgotten in a warehouse, but the shuttle was empty. Life support had been active recently, powered down but still warm. David was somewhere in the ring's enormous interior. Ember left his ship and entered the structure through a port that opened at his approach. The ring's intelligence recognized his species, welcome protocols activating in his neural interface. "Greetings, Pathfinder. Systems operational. Please state your inquiry. Looking for friend. Human. Recently arrived." The intelligence processed this request, then projected a holographic map showing David's location 3 kilometers into the structure's core. Current occupant accessing historical database. Warning, occupant appears distressed. Ember hurried through corridors sized for giants. His small wings helped him glide across gaps where floor sections had retracted. Emergency lighting guided him through the maze, the ring's intelligence providing directions directly into his mind. He found David in a chamber that might have been a control room or a temple or both. Massive displays covered the walls, showing star charts and data streams in dozens of dead languages. David sat on the floor amid scattered food wrappers and empty water containers, staring at one particular display with an expression Ember recognized as grief. "David," Ember's translator vocalized, the sound echoing strangely in the huge space. David jumped, scrambling to his feet and spinning around. His face cycled through shock, disbelief, joy, and confusion in rapid succession. "Ember, how are you here? This is impossible. You can't be here." Ember moved closer, scales showing colors of relief and happiness. "Followed you? Many worlds. Long time? Followed me? Across how many systems?" David's voice cracked. "Ember, do you understand how dangerous this journey was? The quantum instabilities alone should have torn your ship apart. You could have died 100 different ways." "Affirmative, necessary. Could not let you be alone." David's eyes filled with water, that human response to strong emotion. He dropped to his knees and pulled Ember close, holding the small dragon against his chest. "You stubborn, wonderful little friend. You incredible fool. I thought I'd never see you again." They stayed like that for several minutes, two lonely beings reunited in a galaxy that had forgotten how to sustain life. When David finally released him, Ember noticed how thin his friend had become, how the human's hands shook slightly. "How long have you been here?" Ember asked through the translator. 4 days, maybe 5. I lose track." David gestured at the displays. "I found it, Ember. I found what happened to the human fleet. And it's not good news." The display David indicated showed a massive portal, something that bent space in ways that made Ember's mind hurt to comprehend. David explained what he'd learned from the ring's database. The structure was a warp gate hub, built by a coalition of species as their last great project before fleeing the galaxy. Multiple civilizations contributed their best technology, creating portals that could reach other galaxies, bridges across the void between spiral arms. The human colony fleet made it here 63 years ago, David continued. They detected the quantum instability expanding, realized this galaxy was dying. The ring's AI offered them passage through an experimental portal to a smaller galaxy, 200,000 light-years away. A galaxy still young, still stable, still alive. They went through, Ember asked all of them, 2 million humans, the last survivors of Earth's colonization efforts. They took their ships, their frozen embryos, their entire genetic database and went looking for a new home. David's voice was hollow. The portal worked. The AI confirmed successful transit. They made it. Ember waited, sensing there was more. The portal can only be used once per gate, David said. Something about quantum entanglement and energy requirements I don't fully understand. The gate to that galaxy is closed permanently now. There's no way to follow them. The weight of those words settled on them both. David had chased his people across hundreds of light years and millions of years of empty history, only to learn they'd escaped to somewhere unreachable. The trail ended here at this monument to species who saw the future and ran. But there are other humans, Ember said. Settlement on New Spring. 200 people. Alive and growing, David looked up sharply. What? Ember explained his discovery, describing Ruth and her community. The children who'd never seen Earth, the life they'd built from a crash landing. He told David about the coordinates David himself had provided, the gift of knowledge that gave them hope. I thought they were doomed, David whispered. I gave them those coordinates as a courtesy, but I didn't think they'd ever use them. The resources needed for space travel, the technology required, I assumed they'd live and die on that one island. They were grateful. They asked me to tell you something. Ember pulled up the memory precisely. Being alone is choice. You do not have to make that choice. David laughed, the sound somewhere between humor and tears. They're right. I've been so focused on finding the fleet, on reaching the people who escaped, that I forgot about the people still here. The scattered colonies, the crash survivors, the isolated outposts. This galaxy isn't empty. It's just quiet. He stood looking at the displays with new energy. The ring's database has records of thousands of habitable worlds. Coordinates, atmospheric data, resource surveys. We could map them, connect them, help the scattered humans find each other. Build something new, Ember suggested. Exactly. We can't follow the fleet, but we can honor what they tried to do. We can build a new human civilization here in this old galaxy. It'll be smaller, harder, but it'll be ours. David looked at Ember with gratitude, and I won't have to do it alone. They spent 3 more days at the ring, downloading databases and gathering information. The structure's AI answered their questions, explaining technology and providing maps. It seemed pleased to have purpose again, to serve explorers rather than maintain empty halls. On the 3rd day, as they prepared to leave, the ring's AI delivered a final gift. Scanning Pathfinder vessel occupant. Species identity confirmed. Additional information available regarding your people's fate. Would you like to access these records? Ember hadn't expected this. He accepted the data transfer, watching through his neural interface as the ring showed him what happened to his species. They hadn't abandoned him through cruelty or forgetfulness. They'd gone searching for help, trying to find allies to fight the quantum instability. The mission failed. Their ships broke down in deep space. They died trying to save their worlds, including Haven. I am last, Ember said quietly. Maybe, David replied. Or maybe there are others waiting like you were, scattered on worlds we haven't found yet. We'll look for them too. Together they left the ring, their ships flying side by side rather than separated by weeks of travel. David adjusted his course, no longer chasing ghosts toward an impossible destination. Instead, he aimed toward World 67, where Ember's ship had logged several unusual readings that might indicate survivors. World 67 announced itself with a distress beacon so old that its signal had degraded into ghost whispers across multiple frequencies. David and Ember emerged from their jump to find a planet wrapped in ice, its single continent locked under glaciers that sparkled pink in the light of a dying star. The beacon originated from somewhere beneath the ice. Readings show a structure under the glacier, David reported over their linked communication systems. Power signature is faint but present. Something down there is still running. They landed near where the beacon was strongest, setting their ships down on ice thick enough to support much larger vessels. The wind howled with cold that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. David wore his environmental suit while Ember relied on his species' natural resilience, his crystalline scales generating enough internal heat to offset the freezing air. The entrance revealed itself as a shaft bored through ice, leading down into darkness. Emergency lights activated as they descended, recognizing motion and providing illumination for the first time in possibly centuries. The shaft ended in a facility carved from bedrock, its walls lined with pods designed for long-term stasis. Most pods were dark, their occupants long dead from system failures too old to calculate. But 3 pods in the eastern wing still glowed with active status indicators. David approached the first one, wiping frost from its viewing panel. Ember, come look at this. Inside the pod lay one of Ember's people, slightly larger than him with scales that shifted between silver and gold even in stasis. The pod's display showed vital signs, slow and minimal but present. She was alive. Ember pressed his foreclaw against the pod's control panel. The facility's systems recognized him, providing access without security checks. Information flooded his neural interface. The occupant's name was Ash. She'd been injured during a failed attempt to repair the facility's main power core. Automated systems placed her in emergency stasis until help could arrive. She'd been waiting for 3,000 years. Can we wake her? David asked. Pod systems functional. Medical systems need calibration. She will need time to recover. Ember initiated the revival sequence, watching as the pod began warming its occupant gradually. Will take 6 hours, they explored while waiting. The facility had been a research station studying stellar death, positioned here to observe the red giant sun's final phases. Ember's people operated it as part of their galaxy-wide scientific network. When the evacuation began, most staff left immediately. Ash and 2 others remained to finish critical research, planning to evacuate on the last available ship. The ship never came. The others died trying to reach alternate transport. Ash made it to the stasis pods. There are 2 more active pods, David noted, checking the facility's status board. They moved to the second pod. Another of Ember's species waited inside, smaller and younger looking, his scales predominantly blue. The nameplate read River. According to records, he'd been a junior researcher who volunteered to enter stasis due to a genetic condition that required specialized medical treatment unavailable at the station. The third pod held another surprise. The occupant was neither human nor Ember's species, but something else entirely. Tall and thin with 6 limbs and skin that looked like polished stone. The database identified her as a member of the Builders, the species that constructed the ring and many other megastructures. Her name translates to Thought of Winter, David read from the display. She was serving as an engineering consultant when the evacuation order came. She chose to wait with the others rather than abandon them. They initiated revival sequences for both remaining pods and settled in to wait. The facility's automated systems provided them with food from storage that had been perfectly preserved in the cold. David cooked something resembling soup while Ember watched the pod displays anxiously. Ash woke first, her eyes opening slowly as the pod drained its stasis fluids. She gasped, coughed, and tried to sit up too quickly. Ember was there immediately, supporting her, sending calming signals through bioelectric touch. Easy, he vocalized through the translator. Safe now. You are safe. Ash's confusion cleared gradually as her cognitive functions restored. She looked at Ember, at David, at the facility around them. How long? She asked, her voice rough from disuse. 3,000 years, Ember answered gently. She took that information with remarkable calm, processing it the way scientists process data. The others? Gone. You are last at this facility. But not alone. Not anymore. River woke next, his revival complicated by the medical condition that had put him in stasis originally. David administered drugs from the facility's medical supplies, combinations that the automated systems recommended. The treatment worked, stabilizing River's condition enough for him to sit up and meet his rescuers. Thought of Winter's revival took longest. Her species required different protocols, but eventually, she emerged from stasis looking thin and disoriented. She towered over both David and Ember, her stone-like skin cracked in places but regenerating slowly. "I dreamed," she said, her voice like wind through caves. "I dreamed the galaxy died while I slept." "Parts of it did," David admitted. "But not all. There's still life, still chances for new beginnings." They spent 2 days at the facility while the 3 survivors recovered strength. Ember felt something unfamiliar growing in his chest. Something beyond the loneliness he'd carried since his people left Haven. Community. Family. Ash immediately took to organizing their next steps, her scientific mind categorizing information and planning logistics. River was quieter, overwhelmed by lost time, but he helped where he could. Thought of Winter shared knowledge about the ancient structures her people built, providing insights that could help them navigate the galaxy's remaining technology. "We should return to Haven," Ember suggested. "World is safe, has resources. Good place for new beginning." "What about the human settlement?" Ash asked, having learned about New Spring from Ember's explanation. "Would they accept non-human neighbors?" David smiled. "Ruth's people would welcome you, but Haven makes sense as a base. It's positioned well, far from the quantum instabilities, and it already has infrastructure that responds to your species, Ember." They prepared to leave, packing what they could salvage from the facility. Thought of Winter surprised them all by activating a builder device she'd kept in personal storage. A fabricator that could produce complex technology from raw materials. "This will help," she said simply. The journey back began with 5 people in 3 ships. They stopped at the ring first, so Thought of Winter could interface with her people's technology and download additional databases. The ring's AI seemed pleased to meet a builder again, sharing information about other structures and installations scattered across the galaxy. "There are 17 other facilities like the ring," Thought of Winter reported. "All operational, all waiting. We could create a network, connect the scattered survivors." From the ring, they set course back toward New Spring, planning to inform Ruth's settlement about their discoveries. But along the way, they made another stop that changed everything. World 98 appeared unremarkable at first glance, another ice world with minimal atmosphere. But Ember's ship detected a faint bioelectric signature, something that resonated with his species' unique biological frequencies. They found him in a cave system that had maintained a pocket of warmth through geothermal vents, another of Ember's people older and scarred from surviving alone. His name was Dusk, and he'd been on World 98 when the evacuation happened, conducting solo research. He chose to remain at his post rather than evacuate, believing someone would return eventually. 4 of our kind now, Ash said, watching Dusk and Ember communicate through rapid color changes. Not enough to rebuild our species, but enough to remember who we were. They continued toward New Spring with their growing crew, 5 survivors from dead civilizations, traveling together through a galaxy that had tried to kill them all. They carried knowledge, technology, hope, and something more important. They carried each other. The settlement on New Spring had grown in the weeks since Ember first visited. New structures dotted the coastline, workshops and homes built from local materials and salvaged technology. Ruth stood on the beach watching 3 ships descend, her expression mixing hope and caution. David emerged first, and Ruth's face broke into a genuine smile. "You came back." "I had help," David said, gesturing as Ember appeared beside him. Then came Ash, River, Dusk, and finally Thought of Winter, whose height made several humans take involuntary steps backward. "We found friends," Ember explained simply. The integration wasn't immediate. Humans and aliens circled each other with curiosity and uncertainty, but children broke the ice as children do, approaching Ember and his companions with questions and fascination. River, still weak from his medical condition, found himself surrounded by young humans who wanted to touch his blue scales and hear him make the chiming sounds that was laughter in his species. "We brought gifts," David said, displaying the data they'd collected from the ring and various facilities. "Coordinates to habitable worlds, technology blueprints, Agricultural data, medical information, everything we found that might help. Ruth examined the data on a portable display, her eyes widening. This is enough to change everything. We could expand, establish multiple settlements, connect with other survivor groups. That's the idea, David agreed. Build a network across the empty spaces. Make this galaxy alive again. Thought of Winter contributed her builder-fabricator, teaching the settlement's engineers how to operate it. Within days, they were producing solar panels more efficient than anything the humans had managed to create on their own. The technology required rare materials, but Dusk knew where to find them, remembering research sites from before the evacuation. Ash organized expeditions to nearby systems, mapping resources and establishing supply chains. Her scientific training proved invaluable for analyzing alien ecosystems and determining what could safely support human life. River, despite his condition, worked on communication systems that could bridge the vast distances between potential settlements. But Haven called to them. Ember especially felt the pull of home. After 2 months on New Spring, he approached David with a proposal. Haven could be better base, Ember said. Larger facilities, technology that responds to my people. Could build something bigger there. David had been thinking the same thing. You're right. New Spring is perfect for Ruth's people, but Haven has infrastructure we barely explored. We could establish a central hub there. They presented the idea to Ruth, who immediately saw the logic. We're stable here. We don't need constant support anymore, but we'd like to maintain contact, establish regular supply runs and communication. Agreements were made. 20 volunteers from New Spring would join the Haven expedition, humans who wanted to be part of building something new, engineers, teachers, medical personnel, and families willing to take the risk. The journey back to Haven took 3 weeks, traveling carefully to accommodate slower ships. They arrived to find the planet unchanged, still beautiful and wild and waiting. The automated systems recognized Ember and his companions, activating facilities that had slept since the evacuation. Landing in the valley where David had first crashed felt like completing a circle. Ember stood on the hillside where he'd watched his friend depart months ago, but now he wasn't alone. David stood beside him. So did Ash, River, Dusk, Thought of Winter, and 20 humans ready to build. Home, Ember said simply. They established their base in the largest facility complex, chambers that had housed hundreds of Ember's people during the planet's prime. The automated systems provided power, water, and environmental control. Thought of Winter's fabricator produced tools and equipment. Human engineering combined with alien knowledge to create something neither species could have managed alone. More survivors arrived over the following months. A human salvage crew found drifting in a damaged ship, having survived on emergency rations for 2 years. A small group of a species that resembled crystalline spiders awakened from a failed evacuation ship. A lone artificial intelligence housed in a mobile platform, the last remnant of a machine civilization that had dissolved into the quantum instabilities. Each edition brought new knowledge, new perspectives, new hope. The settlement grew from 5 individuals to 50, then to 200. They sent expeditions to other worlds, establishing outposts and research stations. They connected with Ruth's settlement and other survivor groups, creating a communication network across light years. Ember watched it all with quiet satisfaction. His scales had developed new colors over the months, patterns that expressed contentment and purpose. He was no longer the last of his kind, though his species would never return to its former numbers. 4 individuals couldn't rebuild a civilization, but they could remember it, honor it, and teach others what they had been. David changed too. The haunted look in his eyes faded, replaced by focus and determination. He coordinated expeditions, analyzed data, and helped resolve disputes between different species trying to coexist. He had found his purpose not in chasing the past, but in building the future. One evening, nearly a year after they'd reunited at the ring, David and Ember sat on their favorite hillside watching Haven's twin moons rise. The settlement spread below them, lights from different structures creating a pattern of human and alien habitation. Voices carried on the wind, humans laughing at something River had said. Thought of Winter teaching engineering to a group of eager students. Ash arguing about scientific methodology with anyone who would listen. I never thought I'd see this, David admitted. When I left Earth, I imagined finding empty worlds or dead civilizations. I never considered we might find something alive, something worth building. You were looking in wrong direction, Ember said. looking behind at what was lost. I looked forward at what was possible. You followed me across 120 worlds. 118. You exaggerate. Ember's scales showed amusement colors. David laughed. 118 then. You stubborn little dragon. Do you know what you taught me? What? That loneliness is only permanent if we accept it. You refused to accept it. You chased me across an empty galaxy because you believed we were better together than apart. You were right. Ember leaned against David's side, comfortable and warm. We are good team. Human stubbornness and dragon determination. Could do worse. We could do worse, David agreed. They sat in silence for a while, watching their settlement thrive. Ships came and went, carrying supplies and information between outposts. The automated systems hummed their ancient songs. No longer maintaining emptiness but supporting life, Haven had found its purpose again. Not as a garden world waiting for extinct caretakers, but as a hub for new beginnings. What would your people think? David asked. If they could see this? Different species working together, building something new in their old facilities. Ember considered the question. They would approve. My people believed in preservation, in maintaining beauty for future generations. We are those future generations. We preserve by continuing, by making life where there was emptiness. And the humans who evacuated? If they could see what we're building, they would understand. Sometimes running is wise. Sometimes staying is wise. Both choices are correct if they preserve life and hope. A shooting star crossed the sky, some ancient debris burning in Haven's atmosphere. Ember watched it trace its arc and disappear. I have question, Ember said. When I found you at Ring, you were sad. You learned human fleet escaped to unreachable place. Does that still hurt? David thought about it honestly. Sometimes. I wonder what they're building out there, what kind of civilization they're creating. But I don't regret staying here. This is where I'm needed. This is where you are. Good answer. They remained on the hillside until both moons reached their zenith, casting silver light across the valley. Below them, Haven lived and grew and remembered. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent and eternal. But here, on this small planet in a galaxy that forgot how to sustain life, two unlikely friends had proven something important. They had proven that empty spaces could be filled, that broken things could be rebuilt, and that loneliness was never the end of the story. It was just the chapter before friendship begins. Ember stood, stretching his small wings. Come. Ash wants help analyzing data from Expedition to World 103. She says readings are strange. Strange how? Strange like maybe more survivors. Strange like maybe another species sleeping in stasis. Strange like our family might grow again. David stood too, brushing dust from his clothes. Then we should help her look. That's what we do now. We find the lost ones. We wake them up. We bring them home. Yes, Ember agreed. Is good work. Better than being alone. They walked down the hillside together toward the bright lights of the settlement, toward Ash and her scientific mysteries, toward River and his communication arrays, toward Thought of Winter and her ancient builder knowledge, toward the 20 humans who'd chosen to build a new life among aliens, toward the future they were creating together from the ruins of the past. A lonely little dragon had chased his human friend across 118 worlds in an empty galaxy. But Haven wasn't empty anymore, and neither of them was lonely. They had found what explorers always search for, whether they know it or not. They had found home. They had found family. They had found each other. And in a galaxy that tried to forget how to sustain life, that was enough to begin everything again.